if you want to be fast, you need to be able to decelerate the fastest. If you look at the fastest cars, they have the best brakes. If you look at the fastest cars, they have the best tires, the most high end, right? Why? Because if they're gonna go super, super fast, they better be able to brake as quickly as possible, right? I'm gonna run you through some drills that you guys can do at home, at the field, by yourself. I'm gonna explain what they do. So that way you can get faster on the football field, dominate, produce, perform, maybe one day earn that college spot, get that scholarship. Let's run it. So the first exercise that you can do is super basic, super simple, but it's a heel to toe walk. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna walk, pressing your heel on the ground, keeping your toes dorsiflex, so keeping them up, almost like you wanna bring your toe to your shin, right? You're gonna put your heel down, press up on your toes, put your heel down, press up on your toes, and then you're just gonna walk nice and slow, trying to dig that big toe into the ground as you're walking, right? And this will start to expose some deficiencies that you have in your balance as well, right? So you're gonna start back right here, right? Heel to toe walk, heel to toe, heel to toe. You can walk for 10 yards, 15 yards, 20 yards. You can do them in place if you don't have a lot of room at home or in your basement, right? You just find a way to get these done. But what this is gonna do is start to train up your calves, right? Because a lot of times, like the kids that we have that train here that run flat-footed, right, they don't possess any calf strength, right, to be able to handle the force output as they're pressing on the ground, right? So the first thing that they do is they get a flat tire. Now, you know you can't be fast if you have flat tires, right? Car can't move if it has flat tires, so you can't have flat feet. Right? You gotta be able to push and produce force through the ground, but you can't do that if you're running flat-footed. So you put your heel down, press up on your toes, heel down, press up on your toes, and start to feel what it's like to actually push through the ground, pressing your toes and the balls of your feet into the ground, right? The next exercise that you can do, it's called a double leg pogo. You can do this in place, you can do this moving, you can do this for 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, whatever, right? The goal here is that we're actively pushing through the ground, right? The balls of our feet are actually gonna actively push through the ground. We're not just gonna passively just jump on the ground. We're gonna push, press, and then pretend like we want to, press 2 inches under the ground, right? So every time your foot hits, pretend like you're trying to press through the ground so that way you're actively producing force through the turf or through the court or whatever it is, right? So again, you always want to stay dorsiflex so that those toes are going to be pinned up to your shins, pressing through the ground and the balls of your feet, and then you're just going to pop like you're on a pogo stick, okay? Arms at the side, and you're just pushing through the ground here like this, okay? Actively pushing through the ground, right? Trying to produce force like you want to push through the ground. You can do this 5 yards, 10 yards, 15 yards, like I said. Now, to take this up a next level, then you can do single leg pogos. Okay, single leg pogos are just like the double leg pogos, a little harder because your entire body weight is coming down on one leg, right? So, but you're gonna do a single leg. So you do the right leg, 5 yards, 10 yards, left leg, 5 yards, 10 yards, right? And then push through the ground, okay? Keeping your heel off the ground, actively pushing and pressing through the ground, right? So those 3 exercises, if you're having trouble running flat-footed, it's probably because you possess minimal calf strength, or you just never have actually trained, right, what it's like to push through the ground and run in the balls of your feet, okay? All right, so now the next big thing that we see, and a lot of athletes in general, but specifically football players too, especially those that need to work on the fundamentals and the foundations, right, is they don't pump their arms, okay? Your arms lead your movement, right? So if you want to actually see this happen real time in a cool and kind of weird way, right, put your arms at your side and then try to walk, right? You feel stiff, you feel hard, it doesn't feel natural. Now without thinking, just walk. You see what happens? Arms swing. This is natural. These are biomechanics. This is just how we move. So now think about if you're trying to sprint, jump, cut, and you're not pumping your arms. Your body will be stiff, it'll be tight, and it won't feel natural. So the biggest piece here is athletes need to pump their arms, right? But there is a way to pump your arms, and there's different mechanics. There's no like one way or right way, because you can look at Olympic sprinters, you can look at different athletes that are super fast, and they all pump their arms differently, right? So there isn't like one clear way, but there are some things, especially if you really suck at pumping your arms, there is a way that you can work on this, okay? So 3 drills for you, right? Number 1, we're gonna do seated arm drive. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna sit on the ground, okay? Keep your chest up nice and tall, and start with your elbows at your ribs and make an L. And what you're gonna do is you're gonna try to bring your back hand into your back pocket, okay? So like your index fingers in your back pocket, your elbow is gonna come up as if someone's behind you and you wanna elbow them right in the mouth, okay? Your front arm, you're gonna take that index finger and bring it right next to the temple, and then bring your elbow in, okay? And you're gonna hold this position, and then slowly switch arms, okay? So you can feel what it's like to actively pump your arms, okay? In full range of motion. Okay, what we see a lot here is athletes will, pump their arms and the arms will swing like this, or then they're over-rotating their body, or they won't pump their arms at all, and then they're trying to overcompensate with their legs, and it just looks unnatural and unfitting, right? So seated arm drives is a good drill, okay? The next thing you can do, the next level, is you can do some loose arm swings. So what you're gonna do, chest up nice and tall, you're gonna bend down, and then you're just gonna swing your arms nice and loose, okay? Because loose is fast, smooth is fast. Now, as you swing and you feel those arms pump, you're gonna slowly start to move your arm from being straight to making an L, okay? Again, nice and smooth, nice and loose, and then you can increase the speed, again, bringing the index finger to the back pocket, and then your front hand to your temple, okay? Then, we can do another thing too to start to get the legs involved, okay? Because once you start getting the legs involved, things can start to change, move, and whatever, right? So, what we're gonna do is we're just gonna stand up nice and straight. We always pump opposite arm with the opposite leg. We don't ever move same arm, same leg. We only ever move opposite to opposite. So we're gonna stand up nice and tall like this, okay, shoulders back, and then all you're gonna do is pick a leg. So I'm gonna do my right leg. My right leg's gonna come up, and as I bring my right leg up, I'm gonna bring my left arm up, okay? I'm gonna do that a couple times, not even worrying about my other arm, right? Just not even gonna worry about it, okay? I'm just gonna work on the tempo and the rhythm. Oh, I'm a little off balance there. Tempo and rhythm of bumping my arms. Then as I get comfortable, what I'll do is I'll start getting the other arm involved. And I'll start to get on a good tempo and a good rhythm. And then you can switch arms, all right, switch legs, start getting the other arm involved. And then just start working on driving that knee and driving that arm as well. That way, if you're just a fundamental football player, athlete looking to get faster, you gotta get the arms involved. Before you even think about anything advanced or any advanced type of drills, you gotta lock in these fundamentals. So, another thing that we see a lot of athletes do in their fundamentals for their sprint and speed mechanics is they run with their hips back, right? So like when they go and accelerate, and they try to accelerate, they keep their hips back, okay? Or when they're running, trying to run at top velocity, right? Their hips are back as they're trying to run at top velocity. Now, the problem with this is, right, since their hips are back, they don't get full extension through the glutes or through the hamstrings, so they're not getting the power output that they could be getting, right, if their hips were forward and their hips were stacked with their knees and their heels, right? So, a couple of drills that we have to really do this is just strengthen glutes, strengthen your hip extension, and start to practice what it's like to get your hips through. So, one thing we do, right, super simple, you put your heels on the ground, toes up to the sky, okay? And you drive your heels through the ground, okay? Drive your heels through the ground while squeezing your glutes and squeezing your hamstrings, okay? As you're doing this, you're working on that hip extension so that way you can strengthen your glutes and your hamstrings, okay? Another drill that you can do is what's called a 2-point to knee raise. So what a 2-point to knee raise is just working on starting with your hips back as if you're in acceleration or getting ready to accelerate, and driving your knee up and extending your hips forward through your glutes and your hamstrings, right? So how you do this, right? You start here in a 2-point stance, okay? And you drive your leg through the ground and work on extending those hips forward, knee stacked to your hip, okay? Squeezing that glute, not bringing that knee super high, but just bringing the knee to the hip level and squeezing those glutes. And just feeling, right? You'll even feel those glutes start to fire up, light up. You'll feel what it's like to extend that hip forward. Okay, so, if we're accelerating, obviously we don't want to stand straight up. We'd be going out forward, but this is just a simple drill to feel what it's like to extend the hips through your hip flexors, squeeze your glutes, and squeeze your hamstrings, okay? So a lot of athletes, fundamentally, they have trouble with this, right? Especially football players that are always low, low, low. They have trouble with this drill. So another drill that we can do to work on this hip extension, now with this one, you do need to hook up a band or wrap a band around something that's really sturdy and strong, right? So like a fixed pole or a weight rack or something like that. You get a band that's not too difficult to pull, but also not super light. So I'm using like a medium green level band right here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna straddle it like this. I'm gonna grab it with my hands and I'm gonna walk forward until there's like some good tension on the band. Now, what I want to do here is with my shoulders back and my chest tall, I'm going to bring my hips back and I'm going to feel that stretch in my hamstrings. And then I'm going to pull my hips through and extend my glutes. Now, what this is going to do is work on strengthening your hamstrings and your glutes, but also get you to feel what it's like to extend those hips. Now, a lot of athletes that we find and see that have trouble, right, extending their hips is they have really weak glutes, right? They're not strengthening their glutes and their hip flexors. A lot of football players also have a lot of glute and hip flexor strains and injuries. So this is a good exercise. You can do like 3 to 4 sets to 10 to 15, 20, 25 reps, working on that hip extension strength, so that way when it comes to sprinting and speed and acceleration, you're actually strong enough to accelerate. So another thing that we see with athletes, and this kind of ties in with the hip extension, is they're not extending in acceleration, right? So in acceleration phase, they're not fully driving their hips through and extending through their acceleration. They're just kind of like stepping out, right, and taking short strides. So when you accelerate, right, think of it like a muscle car, right? When that muscle car accelerates, it gets real low and it drives forward with force, right? It's explosive when it gets out. So a lot of athletes talk to us and they're like, oh, I want to be more explosive. I want to get more explosive. But they're not moving explosively, right? They're not driving out explosively. If you want to be explosive, you need to move with explosion, right? You can't just passively sprint out. You need to drive like it, right? So it's one thing to talk about it and say it, but then it's a whole other thing to practice it and drill it. So 3 drills that we do is, okay, we do a wall drive, a leaning wall drive, where we start to feel what it's like to extend and drive that knee through, okay? We can then do a 2-point to wall knee drive to kind of take that up a notch. And then we do skips, okay? And one thing we do is skips for height, and these skips for height teach us and move us so that we can extend through the ground and drive our knee, which I'll go through now. If you want to be fast, you need to be able to decelerate the fastest. If you look at the fastest cars, they have the best brakes. If you look at the fastest cars, they have the best tires, the most high end, right? Why? Because if they're gonna go super, super fast, they better be able to brake as quickly as possible, right? Okay, so the first drill that you can do, a wall leaning knee drive, is really just a fundamental drill to just work on feeling what it's like to extend with those hips and drive those knees forward. So a couple of things I need you to make aware of is, as you're doing this, you don't want to drive your knee up. As you do this, you don't want your back foot to be flat, okay? And as you do this, you want to maintain a strong core, okay? So as you're doing this, you want to position yourself to where, if you're leaning, you're going to be about 45 degrees, okay? Now think of it like an acceleration phase, right? Like an airplane or a jet. This is the analogy we use here. If you're a jet or an airplane and you're taking off on the runway, you don't immediately go straight up, right? Wouldn't be possible, because if you tried to, you would fall straight flat. A jet, an airplane, as they take off gradually at an angle. Why? Because it's the most efficient and quickest way to accelerate, okay? You want to accelerate on an angle. So I want to position ourselves about 45 degrees, bring our hips forward and squeeze those glutes and feel those hamstrings, okay? So I'm leaning here, my core is nice and tight, my feet aren't flat, I'm pushing through the ground actively. Now what I'm gonna do is, I'm gonna slowly bring my knee forward, not up, forward, and feeling what it's like to extend through the wall. Now if you notice as I did that, I didn't pop straight up, okay? I'm leaning forward, my hips are still forward, I'm squeezing my glute, my toe is still dorsiflexed, I'm squeezing my glutes here, and I'm just feeling what it's like to drive that knee forward. Pushing through the ground, my calves are lit up because I'm pushing through the ground, my toes are up to my shin, and I'm just feeling what it's like to stay at this angle and drive that knee forward with extension, okay? You then can take this up a notch and do a 2-point stance to wall leaning knee drive. So what this is you start here in a 2-point stance like this, okay? And then I gotta position myself back a little bit. You might have to like move yourself around the wall to get in the right position, but I'm gonna move back a little bit, lean forward, and then I'm going to, not as fast as I can, but at a medium speed, push through the wall and feel what it's like to extend off that down leg, that drive leg, and bring my hips forward. Now be careful, because when you go to the wall, you don't want to strain your wrist or anything like that. So I'm gonna push through the wall, right? Extend those hips through, squeeze those glutes, pretend as if I'm trying to sprint and accelerate. Do this on each leg, 3 reps, 5 reps, 10 reps, whatever's comfortable for you. You can do this at home and accelerate. So this drill right here is called skips for height. Okay, so this is something you want to do for like between 10 to 20 yards, right? And as you're doing this, what you want to do is actively, right? This is a recurring theme. You want to actively drive your feet through the ground, actively pick your knee up, okay, and drive your arms and feel what it's like to push through the ground and expand, explode, and extend. So I'm gonna back up a little bit, okay? But you don't need to go crazy and go super, super high. But as you're doing this, you're just gonna skip and then drive that knee up with nice, smooth, rhythmic skips as you're driving that knee up, okay? Nice and smooth, in a good rhythm. You're gonna push through that ground and extend your knee up as you skip. This is gonna work on you actually extending as you're trying to sprint and move, okay? You're not gonna put super expensive brakes on my, Toyota Camry, because it don't go that fast, it don't really move. But on a Ferrari, on a Lambo, right? On a Maserati or something, you gotta put the best brakes on it because it's gonna move. So if you wanna be fast as an athlete, you need to learn how to decelerate, right? So 3 drills that we do is, number 1, the main problem I see with a lot of athletes that can't decelerate properly is they don't drop their hips. Right? Sometimes it's mind numbing of like, get lower, drop your hips, right? So a simple drill to do is just hip drops. You work on, right? Just dropping your hips, getting low, maintaining a good athletic position, and feeling what it's like to drop. I see fundamental athletes all the time drop, and then their chest comes down and their back rounds, and now like you can't move, you have no vision. That's not how you drop your hips. They drop their hips and they barely get low, thinking that getting low is right here. No, getting low is dropping down and getting low. The lower that you can bring your center of gravity down, the easier it is for you to cut and change direction. That's why people, athletes that are typically shorter, if they're also quick and fast, are super shifty and can move because they're lower to the ground. If you're taller, you're at a slight disadvantage, but it's still possible with lots of drills, strength, a lot of different stuff, right? Another drill we do is just a 2-point to stop. So this is super simple, super basic. You just get in a 2-point stance. You take 1 step and you just drop your hips, right? So you get here, you take 1 step and you drop your hips, right? You start again, you take 1 step and you drop your hips. And you start to move a little bit as you're trying to practice you dropping your hips. Then you do a 5-yard to stop, right? So 5-yard distance, you sprint out. At first, if you're not having a lot of success, decelerating, like you're trying to decelerate and you're falling over, you're trying to decelerate and like it's just not working for you, start slow, okay? But you get 5 yards, you get in a good position, you sprint, and you drop, okay? And just keep it super basic. Don't worry about like how long it's taking you or if you're getting exactly at the line. That's as you become more advanced in your movement. But 5 yards, you sprint, and you drop your hips, maintaining good athletic position, okay? So, in this video, we went over, okay, 5 ways, 5 different scenarios that if you want to get faster, right, that you need to do, right? And 3 drills each. Now you're equipped with 15. You are now equipped with 15 different drills that if you're a beginner football player or a beginner athlete in general and you want to get faster, 15 drills to work on 5 different aspects of your speed so that way you can become the fastest, most best version of yourself, okay? So drill these, practice, okay? And if you found this content valuable or useful, do us a favor, hit the subscribe button, turn on notifications because we're gonna start producing more of these videos and more help, okay? So if you find value, hit the like button, let us know if you like this content, subscribe, right? And turn on those notifications so that way you can know when we drop some more content. Thanks, guys.